The war in Ukraine, now over 2.5 years long, is defined by the reach of its weapons. The Tomahawk cruise missile, a symbol of American military might, is at the center of a heated debate. Ukraine seeks these missiles to strike deep behind enemy lines, hoping to force Moscow to negotiate. However, the U.S., led by President Trump, has refused to provide them, fearing escalation with Russia. This decision highlights the tension of aiding Ukraine without provoking a nuclear-armed superpower. The Tomahawk represents a potential game-changer for Ukraine, but a risk too great for the U.S. This pivotal moment will shape the future of the war and global power dynamics. The Tomahawk is a long-range subsonic cruise missile known for its stealth and precision. It flies at low altitudes, avoiding radar detection, making it hard to intercept. Unlike ballistic missiles, it functions like a pilotless jet, with wings and an engine for sustained flight. Its range of up to 2,500 kilometers allows it to strike deep inside continents. The missile's guidance system uses GPS for pinpoint accuracy. Each Tomahawk costs about $2 million, designed to destroy high-value targets. The U.S. has over 1,000, continuously updated, with the latest version introduced in 2021. Its complexity requires extensive training, a key reason for withholding it from Ukraine. The Tomahawk is a strategic asset, projecting power without risking pilots or aircraft. Its potential use by Ukraine raises concerns about direct U.S. involvement in the conflict. Ukraine's desire for Tomahawk missiles stems from enduring relentless Russian attacks. Russia launches strikes from deep within its territory, beyond Ukraine's current reach. President Zelensky believes Tomahawks could level the playing field, targeting key military sites. Striking targets like the Shahed drone factory and Engels 2 airbase could disrupt Russia's war efforts. This capability would force Russia to reconsider its aggression and potentially negotiate peace. Zelensky argues that deep strike capabilities are crucial for compelling Moscow to negotiate. After a disappointing meeting with President Trump, Zelensky hinted at the need for long-range weapons. He suggested that without these capabilities, Russia has no incentive to stop fighting. For Ukraine, the Tomahawk is not about escalation, but creating conditions for genuine peace. Deep strike capabilities may hold the key to peace, by forcing Russia to negotiate in good faith. President Trump firmly stated the U.S. will not help Ukraine fire Tomahawk missiles at Russia. The complexity of the weapon system and strategic risks are his main reasons. Trump emphasized the extensive training required, making immediate use impractical. He stated, "The only way a Tomahawk would be fired is if we fired it, and we will not do that." This reflects a policy to avoid direct U.S. involvement in combat against Russia. The administration provides military aid, but avoids crossing red lines that could escalate the conflict. The focus is on defensive systems and shorter-range weapons for Ukraine. The Tomahawk, designed for deep strikes, represents a risk the U.S. is unwilling to take. Trump's stance is to support Ukraine's defense without igniting a global catastrophe. The decision underscores the careful balance of aiding Ukraine while avoiding direct confrontation with Russia. The fear of escalation drives the U.S. decision to withhold Tomahawks from Ukraine. Providing these missiles risks a direct confrontation with nuclear-armed Russia. President Trump warns that strikes on Russian territory could provoke severe reactions from Moscow. The White House aims to manage the conflict, not win it for Ukraine at any cost. The Tomahawk, with its strategic reach, could shatter the delicate balance of support. Incremental weapon support has been carefully calibrated to avoid Russian escalation. The Tomahawk is seen as an offensive weapon, blurring the line between support and direct participation. The decision reflects a strategy to contain the conflict without triggering a wider war. The U.S. provides enough support for Ukraine to defend itself, but avoids actions that could escalate tensions. The Tomahawk issue highlights the challenge of supporting Ukraine without provoking a global conflict. Russia has issued a grave warning to the United States, declaring that the transfer of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine would be seen as a direct act of aggression by Washington. This is not just a diplomatic protest. Moscow is signaling that such a move would fundamentally alter the nature of the conflict, bringing the U.S. into the crosshairs of Russian military calculations. President Putin has made it clear that Ukraine lacks the technical expertise to operate Tomahawk missiles independently. He insists that any deployment of these advanced weapons would require direct U.S. military involvement on Ukrainian soil, raising the stakes dramatically. According to Putin, any strike on Russian territory using Tomahawks would be interpreted as an American attack, not just a Ukrainian one. This, he warns, would justify a powerful and immediate Russian response, potentially escalating the conflict to dangerous new levels. By outlining these potential consequences, Putin is sending a calculated message to Washington. His warning is designed to deter the U.S. from crossing this red line, emphasizing the enormous risks and costs that could follow. He threatens not only military retaliation, but also severe diplomatic fallout, warning that such actions could irreparably damage the already fragile prospects for peace and further strain U.S.-Russia relations. The potential breakdown of diplomatic relations between these two nuclear powers could have far-reaching effects, destabilizing not just the region, but the entire global order. World leaders are watching with growing concern as tensions mount. Within the Trump administration, Putin's statements have reinforced deep fears of escalation. U.S. officials are now forced to weigh the risks of supporting Ukraine against the possibility of being drawn into a direct confrontation with Russia. The United States faces a difficult and complex dilemma: how to provide meaningful support to Ukraine without crossing the threshold into open conflict with Moscow. Every decision is now fraught with the risk of unintended consequences. Putin's red line is unmistakable. If Tomahawk missiles are used against Russian targets, Moscow will respond with force. The world is left to wonder just how severe that response might be. This stark warning is now shaping U.S. decision-making at the highest levels, reinforcing the instinct to avoid deeper entanglement and to seek alternatives that might prevent a catastrophic escalation. Ultimately, the situation highlights the immense stakes of the conflict and the fragile balance of international relations, as the world holds its breath and hopes for restraint on all sides. President Zelensky's determined push for Tomahawk missiles, a move he believed could shift the balance of the war, faced a significant setback when the United States refused his request. The denial was not just a political blow, but a personal one for Zelensky, who had invested considerable diplomatic capital in the effort. His high-profile visit to Washington was carefully orchestrated, with the hope of persuading American leaders that these advanced missiles were a strategic necessity for Ukraine's defense and deterrence. Zelensky met with top officials, emphasizing the urgent need for stronger support as Ukraine faced mounting threats. However, the meeting with President Trump did not yield the outcome Zelensky had hoped for. The refusal not only impacted Ukraine's immediate military plans, but also sent a message about the limits of Western backing, leaving Ukrainian strategists scrambling to adjust. In the aftermath, Zelensky took to social media to express his disappointment, carefully hinting at the complex relationship between military capabilities and diplomatic leverage. His words resonated with many Ukrainians, who saw the denial as a setback for their country's security. He suggested that Russia's interest in genuine peace talks diminished when Ukraine lacked the means to defend itself with long-range weapons. Without credible deterrence, the prospect of meaningful negotiations seemed to fade. The American denial highlighted the real limits of U.S. support and exposed the constraints that even close alliances can face in times of crisis. It was a reminder that international partnerships are often shaped by competing interests and political calculations. Zelensky's visible frustration reflected the urgent need for effective tools to both defend Ukraine and strengthen its position at the negotiating table. For Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines, the absence of advanced weaponry meant facing greater risks. This setback was about more than just a single weapon system. It was about Ukraine's ability to shape its own destiny in the face of overwhelming odds. The nation stood at a crossroads, determined to persevere despite the obstacles. Ukraine's leaders argue that lasting peace requires strength, and without deep strike capabilities, the country is forced to fight with significant limitations. The absence of these weapons leaves gaps in Ukraine's defense and complicates its military strategy. Ultimately, the situation underscores the immense challenges of securing international support in a high-stakes conflict, where every decision can alter the course of a nation's future. The war in Ukraine has evolved into a relentless and grinding conflict of attrition, with both sides locked in a struggle that slowly wears down their resources, morale, and willpower. Day after day, the front lines shift only slightly, as each army tries to exhaust the other through constant pressure and devastating attacks. Russia relentlessly employs missiles and drones to strike deep into Ukrainian territory, targeting not just military positions, but also vital infrastructure and civilian areas. These attacks are designed to cripple Ukraine's economy, disrupt daily life, and instill fear among the population, making the cost of resistance painfully high. Despite suffering significant losses on the battlefield, Russia shows no sign of abandoning its ambitions. The Kremlin remains determined to subjugate Ukraine, pouring in fresh troops and resources, and adapting its tactics to maintain pressure on Ukrainian defenders. Ukraine, meanwhile, holds the line with the crucial help of Western aid. Yet, the defenders face constant shortages of ammunition, equipment, and manpower, making them increasingly dependent on foreign support to sustain their resistance and keep hope alive. The desire for deep strike capabilities has grown out of this strategic stalemate. Ukrainian commanders know that simply holding defensive positions is not enough. They need the means to strike back, disrupt Russian operations, and regain the initiative. Ukrainian leaders increasingly believe that defending the front line is unsustainable in the long run, especially when facing a larger and better supplied adversary. The toll on soldiers and civilians alike is mounting, and the pressure to find a new approach is growing. To change the course of the war, Ukraine seeks to disrupt Russia's war effort through sabotage, long-range strikes, and targeted attacks on supply lines. Their goal is to force Moscow to reconsider its strategy and bring about a shift in the conflict's momentum. The arrival of advanced weapons like the Tomahawk cruise missile represents a potential turning point. With such tools, Ukraine hopes to move beyond a purely defensive posture, break the deadlock, and strike at critical Russian assets far behind the front lines. The nature of this conflict demands a fundamental shift in strategy. Only by adapting to the realities of modern warfare and leveraging new capabilities can Ukraine hope to achieve a sustainable path to victory. Ultimately, the situation highlights the urgent need for strategic tools and innovative thinking to alter the dynamics of the war and secure Ukraine's future. The U.S. decision to deny Tomahawks to Ukraine reflects the harsh realities of geopolitics. It's a choice driven by risk assessment in a nuclear-armed world, not a lack of sympathy for Ukraine. The fear of escalation and direct conflict with Russia constrains American policy. President Trump's reasons, training complexity and U.S. involvement, justify the decision. The stance is to support Ukraine's defense without igniting a global catastrophe. For Ukraine, the denial is a bitter pill, as they see Tomahawks as vital for leveling the playing field. The argument for negotiating peace from strength is compelling from Ukraine's perspective. The decision reveals the dilemma of supporting self-defense without triggering wider conflict. Washington's choice is a calculated gamble, prioritizing containment over providing every tool for victory. The high-stakes decision will shape the course of the war and future international security.